Hey everyone, and welcome to the PivotBoss Closing Report for March 29th, 2016. I'm Frank Ochoa, aka PivotBoss, with analysis after the recent session. Here's a look at the daily time frame of the ES. Obviously, we had a significant rally after prices tested early lows. Basically, prices were unable to hold below the previous session's lows, popped back above toward 2027s, which was 5-day VPOC, and from there, obviously, Janet Yellen came on, and that sparked a significant squeeze the rest of the session. Closing price right at the previous week's high. So we're basically on highs here. We've obviously been trending higher. What I talked about before was the fact that prices are holding above this 2009 and 2000 level in general, and any pullback into that zone was likely to be defended by bulls for another squeeze, at least one last squeeze into 2061 and perhaps into the 2077s. That's been our MO the entire time. I thought we would see a little bit more weakness into that zone, but that was not the case. Instead, prices again failed to hold below the previous session's low, squeezed back above the level, and took off. So we're looking at another potential expansion phase from this near-term week and a half range here. So basically, this range right here, fairly narrow. You can see the inside value relationship. I talked about to start the week that this inside value relationship here implies volatility that is coming. This usually implies significant coiled up behavior, and the fuel is there for a massive expansion opportunity. So we could be looking at significant strength on the heels of this recent move. If we look at the intraday time frame, again, this is what we talked about in the trading room this morning. We identified this little range right here and its inability to see acceptance below the previous session's low. In doing so, our primary opportunity was for a squeeze back toward 2027 to 2028. Not only did price do that, Janet Yellen came on, and boom, you saw a significant rally ensue afterwards. You even saw a push right back to the previous session's high price here. Price initially pulled back off that level, rallied through it, and then held here as support, and then pushed right into the previous week's high of 2047 half. So you can see this is very, very plain analysis here that just uses the basic auction high-low close. I mean, that's all we're looking at. The previous session's high-low close, the previous week's high-low close. We're looking for any failed expansion beyond those levels because that leads to significant reversals in the opposite direction. That was clean. Very, very nice the way it played out today. Now what we're seeing is the opportunity to see a continuation through the previous week's high. So I would say any pullback in the upcoming session, perhaps into 2034, 2037, somewhere in this zone, could offer an opportunity for bulls to defend for another squeeze. This time through the previous week's high and into the upside expansion targets. 56, 65, 73s, those are all upside targets to play toward. Obviously, our 61s is the major HVN from the higher time frame. That's this level here. And then we had 77s as the top of the major August range. So those are the major targets to reach here should price see acceptance above 2047 half. Right now, any rejection above this level in overnight trading could open up an early pullback in overnight trading, and that should be defended on first test by bulls. Otherwise, failure to hold above the previous session's high of 2034 opens up a move back across the range into 2020. Taking a look here at crude oil now. Crude oil is significant here, the way it dropped downward. We talked about the potential for weakness, especially given the fact that these participants here were basically slammed. You got a failed expansion above that zone. Price went offered back to the level there. We saw a pullback here that was defended, and then new lows. What we did talk about was the likely opportunity here for bulls to defend 37.65. That was what we were looking for a shot at seeing a retest back toward highs. Otherwise, a failure to hold 37s opens up a move into the next HVN below at 35.17. What happened here today was price pushed below the previous week's low, attempted to establish acceptance, and actually traded down there for quite a while before it squeezed back up and then closed a little higher back above that low. So it wasn't an emphatic reversal yet, but this initial rejection near this LVN could be enough to get this thing back toward 40 and perhaps back into recent highs. So continue to watch 37.65. Should a test occur in overnight trading, expect bulls to defend at least on first test. Otherwise, failure to hold that level opens up a clear path back toward 35.17. On an intraday basis, you can see how prices here. This is very reminiscent of that gold pattern we talked about from the daily time frame to start the new year. You can see this is the bottom of the key range low. Remember when I talked about that 40.12 and how price rallied into it and immediately rejected? The primary idea was for price to drop into 38.33 and test it, and we got that tendency. It worked out perfectly. Now you can see here this little rounded off behavior here below that key range low of 38.33, and then price popped back above that zone. So right now there's a little bit of a clear area of resistance above that zone, about 38.70. That's going to be a clear area to watch there. 38.65. Above that level squeezes right back to 39.21. That's 5-day VPOC, with a shot at seeing a move back toward recent highs of 40.12. So right now, that's the early pattern to watch. This rounded off bottom right here. Look for bulls to squeeze through 38.65 for a test of 39.21 and perhaps a move into 40.12. Failure to hold above 38.33 here puts pressure on these downside levels down here, because below 38 opens up that move again, much lower into the 37. So watch this pattern very closely. I believe above 38.65 squeezes higher. Okay, taking a look now at gold. Gold solid liftoff. This was the biggest pattern we were talking about in the prior session. So in the previous PivotBoss Closing Report, what we were talking about was how price rejected below the previous week's low. This rejection also coincided with the third standard deviation on the PivotBoss bands, and that's a third standard deviation of VWAP using our proprietary code. And what usually that means is when you're trending up significantly and price pulls back to third standard deviation below VWAP, that's a quantifiable signal that prices are undervalued in a bullish market. Those are typically bought almost every time, at least near term, and that's exactly what happened. So what we were looking for was for a pullback in overnight trading to be defended and for a squeeze to occur back into 1245 and perhaps into 1251s. Well, monthly VWAP has now shifted down to 1249. So your primary target is going to be 1245 to 1249, with a shot at seeing a move across the range back into 1260 to 1263. So there could be much more strength ahead. Given the massive squeeze we saw here and price pushing back above composite VPOC of 1233s, the expectation would be that any pullback in the upcoming session will likely be defended off of 1233s for a shot at seeing a further squeeze into those upside targets. So a big time squeeze in gold. And as a matter of fact, if I bring down here the PivotBoss quote board, you can see the ADR method here. Basically, right here, you're seeing the range percent. And basically that shows that crude oil traded a perfect 100% of average range. It's been averaging $1.56 per day, traded $1.57 a range. The ES traded 150% of range. And right here, gold traded 130% of average range. It's been averaging 21 points per session over the last 10 days. Today it traded 28 points. That's a huge move. Additionally, you can see the NQ right there trading 190% of average range. Anytime you get over 150, 175, or 200% of average range, that's a significant session that tells you that volatility has come back to the market, and that's usually a turning point for the market where you see significant movement in the direction of the initial volatility. So this is huge right here. And of course, you can see that basically 190% here for the NQ. That's just significant. So with regards to the gold chart here, what we were looking for obviously played out very nicely. I feel like a continuation will easily be seen into 1245, which was our original target, 51, which was the original target, which is now shifted down to 49. That target zone has a high likelihood of being reached with a potential to see a move back into 1263.90. Okay, taking a look here at the NQ. NQ had a significant day. Again, we were talking about 43.55 being the big time pivot in the chart. This has been clear and away one of the easiest pivots to watch out for over the last few months, and you can see how it had been resistance here, pushed back through it here, came back, made it modestly support a couple of times here, but didn't test it right on the button, but you can see prices have held above that zone. So the idea was that any pullbacks into 43.55 likely to be defended for a continuation and a push to new highs, And we didn't even quite get that far this time around. Again, failing to hold below the previous session's low and seeing a massive squeeze. As a matter of fact, the NQ was quite a bit stronger than the broader market here and led the move up. And it was quite apparent right out of the gate. It opened the session quietly, but then once it broke from the early 30-minute range, it was a full-on race to the highs. Right here, that's the previous week's high, 44.41, closed above that zone. Again, here's what you need to look out for. This is a very clear pattern that works a high percentage of the time when the factors are in line. And this is it right here. So you're going to have a very clean opportunity should this price level be tested. You see this high right here? That high, bears were defending that high, pushed price back below the pivot range. This low was rejected, and then price rallies and sees a major expansion phase through that high. So now when price comes back to that high in overnight trading or in the upcoming session, this is a high probability buy opportunity for bulls looking for a squeeze higher, perhaps into the primary bull target for the week of 45.10. This primary bull target is the PivotBoss ADR method target on a weekly basis. If this is the low for the week, then on a basically a 10-week average range, this would be the highest probability target to reach 45.10. And on a 10-week average, the average range move would take you up into 45.55. So this is what we're going to look at right here. We're going to watch these previous highs. That's 44.26s. Look for any pullback into 44.26s and look to defend that area for a squeeze higher. Failure to hold that area opens up a move back toward lows and a likely retest of the previous week's low of 43.65. So if we take a look at the intraday chart here, which you'll see, again, this was very significant how this thing rallied. In the trading room, what we were watching is this 43.8175, the bottom of the key range here. And what I talked about this morning was right here was this little box, and if price fails to hold below the bottom of this range of 43.81s, we could easily see a move right back to the midpoint of that range here. And I also talked about how bears had been defending, and how there were a lot of buy stops above that zone. So pushing that through that area opened the move into the top of the key range at 44.26. That was the basic idea this morning pre-market for our traders in the trading room. And not only did price reach those two targets, but easily surpassed those targets and rallied into the 25% weekly expansion target of 44.60 beyond the previous week's range. So just a massive, massive rally, clearly program driven, and you don't want to get in front of that freight train. You want to buy alongside it. Every pullback or dip is to be bought. So this is going to be important. This 44.26, watch it closely. It's a crystal clear level, 44.26. If price drops into this area, look for bulls to defend that zone for a push and a retest of the highs and a likely continuation into the primary weekly bull target, which is 45.10, and the potential to see a continuation into 45.55 by the end of the week. All right, that's it for now. Let's see how this thing plays out heading into the rest of the week. Good luck and trade well.